Welcome to this scripting tutorial video that will deal with buttonized scripts that can be used as reaction postures for evasion maneuvers. Mission setup. I'm going to place two surface-to-air missile threat systems in this valley. I'm going to use two identical SA-15s. Using the standard MACE tools here to snap to high points, and then I'm going to check the line of sight for each of them using the mission rehearsal tool. I'm going to use a height of 150 feet, which is going to be the height of my incoming aircraft. Not much coverage here. Let's have a look at the second system. Slightly better coverage. And change the colour of the plot to see. But I think I'm going to move both these threat systems north up into the valley just for the purposes of this scenario. And that looks like a lot better coverage. I'll have my Apache aircraft come in from the valley on the west. Okay, I'm going to find an AH-64 aircraft and place it in this valley, shielded from the two threat systems. I'm going to give it a waypoint path that takes it into plain sight of the threat systems. Just showing the maneuver aggressiveness, as we'll come to that later in the scripting lesson. And I'm setting its route altitude to 150 feet AGL. Just having a quick look at the waypoint path in armour. That looks good. So just a note for later, the reaction posture, if it was automatic, when the aircraft is aware of a threat, will perform a maneuver whereby it turns away from the threat and chaffs before going back to doing what it was doing before. To become aware of the threat, it does need detection mechanisms, and we can see here it has IRWR and RWR, so we will be able to detect threats. So we'll just look at what normally happens when we have an automatic posture set in the threat reaction posture. Going to keep an eye on the platform icon and look in the top left hand corner for a coloured dot, and that coloured dot indicates to me what threat systems are looking at or engaging it. If I see a yellow dot, it will be the search radar is now impacting the aircraft. Orange will be acquisition, and black will mean that I'm being engaged. I've changed my armor view so it looks directly at the target area. As my helicopter comes around this spur, we should see that it gets illuminated first by the search radar, in which case it will not react, but once the target tracking radar is detected, or if a missile launch was detected, then the MACE automatic threat reaction posture kicks in and it will turn away and dispense some countermeasures. You can see the yellow dot in the top left quickly changing through orange and into black, and the aircraft has come out of its intent state and is in a delta maneuvering state with the white vector maneuvering and firing chaff, in this case unsuccessfully. So that's what it does normally. I'm going to reload the mission and make our first script. So our first script is going to be a manual script that we use instead of the reaction posture to evade the threat. Just shortening my waypoint path so we don't have to wait quite so long when we test our mission. I'm going to call this first script something like 180 Turn Chaff and Weave, which is what I'm going to get the script to do for us. I don't need any triggers because the trigger itself is the reaction posture. So the trigger is the threat. So when a threat is detected, we're going to activate this buttonized script. So all buttonized scripts that are saved within the MACE buttonized script structure are available to us in this dropdown. We're going to save one in that structure shortly that can be used instead of the automatic reaction. So my first action is in navigation 1, and it's just going to be a turn through 180 degrees. I'm not going to tick any of the additional options like relative to or shortest turn, which is going to come later. And if I put a minus value in front of that, that means it would turn left, and if I have it just as a normal value, it will turn right. And I'm going to apply this to the scripted platform because this is going to be a buttonized script that we can use anywhere. I'm going to leave ticked the wait until action is finished before doing the next action because I want the turn to complete before it does the next action in the list. The next action in the list is going to be to dispense some chaff, and we do that in the equipment tab under the shoot weapon option, and I'm just picking one of the chaffs and I'm ticking shoot regardless of if equipped and applying it to the scripted platform. I chose shoot regardless because we want this to apply in any mission, and I can shoot another chaff. This time I'm going to start weaving, so I'm going to turn 30 degrees one way, in this case to the right. And I've said wait till that finishes. I'll give it a delay once it's turned before I turn back, and before I turn back I'll pop another chaff out using exactly the same action sequence. Chaff, regardless of if loaded, applied to the scripted platform. I'll put another turn in, but this time back the other way, so I put a minus sign in front, but this time I'm going to just turn through 60 degrees, just so it goes all the way through that center line and back the other way. Put another little delay in, and put another shot of chaff off the scripted platform. And one more turn. This time just 30 degrees back the other way to take us back basically onto the center line of where we started. And we now have a sequence for our script. So we'll chaff, turn 180 degrees, chaff, turn, turn back onto that exit vector, and away we go. I can't test yet because I need to buttonize it and put it in as a script for the reaction posture. So I'm going to buttonize it. I'm going to place this in the SAM folder because it's a useful place to put it. Choose myself an icon. Doesn't really matter which one. And I don't need any user input on this script at all, so I'm not going to select any of those, and I'm going to let it display in the list. Later on you might want to tick that option to not display in the list. If these maneuvers are going to be carried out a lot in your mission, you don't want your list being filled up. But now I can just select it from the drop-down list here. And in it goes. Just to show you, also in the platform properties, if I scroll to where it says reaction posture, we'll see the name of the reaction posture script in that field there as well. And watch what happens. So what we're expecting is once the threat has been sensed, is a script gets created, as we can see up there, and it's going through the sequence of actions. It's already turned through 180 degrees, it's chaffing and weaving. And the thing is, until this script is complete, the reaction posture isn't reset, so it still thinks it's going through its reactions. Now it's complete and it's trying to go back to doing what it was before. And away it goes again. And we reload the mission to move on to our next script. And now for the second script. It's going to be similar to the first script, except we're going to automate some of the weaving and chaffing by using a while loop. So I'm going to copy the script and rename it. There are a bunch of actions here that I don't need to repeat, that I can actually put inside a while loop, which is found in the Scripting 2 tab. The while loop allows me to select a trigger that, while it's true, continues to perform the actions in that loop over and over again. So now I need to select a trigger. I'm using the number variable of the script, this script, as a control. and I'm saying that while it's less than a certain number, this loop will continue. We'll set the number variable in a minute, but I'm going to set this at 4, so I get a number of loops through the actions that I place within this while loop. Comes in as a different color, so that I can nest actions within it. I'm just picking up some of the actions from our previous script and putting them in it so I can see what happens when we test. Now this will be a problem, as we'll find later. The actions aren't symmetrical within the while loop, but for now we'll just do it as it is. So at the end of the while loop, I need something that increments the number variable that's going to be our control. So I need to add an action, go to scripting 1, and select increment number variable. Zero, as always, means this script, and I want to increment it by 1. So it will go from 0 to 1 as it loops, 2 as it loops again, 3, etc. But I also need to, before that while loop starts, set the number variable to a specific value in case it's been set somewhere else. So I'm setting it to 0. So just in case this script has been run multiple times or something like that, I need something that makes sure that's set to a value that I expect before we enter the loop. So now in my list, I have something that sets it to 0, I have the control condition, and then I have my loop of actions. Once that gets to 4, come out of the loop. I'm just adding an extra action here just to show you that I'm going to have this platform return to its root. So I'm going to have it proceed to waypoint and enter intent, meaning its line will go black. But I can choose pretty much any waypoint, but I don't know where it's going to be on the route when it gets threatened. So I'm asking it to proceed to its nearest waypoint that it hasn't yet visited. In addition to that, I'm setting a route speed and telling it to return to intent, and I'm applying it to the scripted platform as I normally would with these sorts of actions. So we've got a very similar script to before, except we've got a while loop that will perform the actions in that loop all the time the number variable is less than 4. I've set the number variable before I go into the while loop. It will go through that a number of times, shoot another chaff, turn another 30 degrees, and then proceed to the nearest waypoint that hasn't been visited. So I buttonize it as normal. Going to place it in the SAM folder, choose an icon, I don't need any user input, and I finish. That means I can now select it as a reaction posture action from our script drop down. And I can just confirm that in the platform properties and test it out. So as before, we're expecting a script to be created once it's threatened. There it is at the top. And we can see that it's executing its 180 degree turn. And now it's entering the while loop. At the moment, the number variable is 0 as it goes through its first loop. It was set to 0 before the loop. Now it's 1 as it goes through the loop again. It executes all the actions, and that final action in the loop is to increment it again by 1. So it'll become 2, go through the loop again, and again, until it checks and the number variable is 4, and then it'll exit the loop. But we can see I've already made a mistake here. The actions in the loop are having the effect of turning the aircraft towards the threat each time, and that's basically because I've made the turns non-symmetrical. They're non-symmetrical, meaning that it's turning more to the left than it is to the right within that loop. The number variable gets to 4. We exit the loop. It fires its final chaff, turns again, delays for a few seconds, and then its vector has now gone black as it proceeds to the next nearest waypoint that it hasn't visited. And that is the end of our script. I'll show you what the script looks like with a symmetrical while loop here. So what I've done is I've taken those first turn actions up out of the while loop, and I've got what I call symmetrical turns. I've got a turn left of 60 degrees, a delay, and a turn right of 60 degrees in the while loop. And I can place the chaff action in there as well. I'm not going to repeat the playback. Suffice to say that if you do have a while loop that's got turns in them, it's best to make them symmetrical if you want them to basically oscillate around a vector away from the threat. And now for our third script. This script is going to use a while loop to put out some chaff at a small spacing and then turn the platform 90 degrees relative to the highest radar threat, and at the same time slow the platform down to 40 knots, and then when it reaches that speed, land. So this time I'm just making a new script and naming it. No triggers as usual because this is a reaction script. I'm adding my first action, which is to shoot chaff, regardless of whether it's loaded, and that's applied to the scripted platform. I'm going to put a 2 millisecond spacing in. First, I'm going to set my script number variable to 0 as my control. And then I'm going to insert the while loop at the top. And the trigger for this while loop is going to be the same as before, the script number variable, but this time I'm just going to say for this script, number variable needs to be less than 2, just to get a couple of quick actions out. I'm going to move the actions inside the while loop, leaving the setting of the script variable to 0 at the very top. Of course, I need to increment the number variable or we'd end up staying in the while loop forever. So now that's a complete while loop. My next action is going to be a turn action. I'm going to turn 90 degrees, but instead of this just being an absolute turn, it's going to be relative to another platform. I'm going to use the script variable scripted platform's highest radar threat. So what it will do is effectively just fill in the call sign of the threat that matches that, and my aircraft, well, when I apply this to the scripted platform, will turn 90 degrees relative to that. And I've ticked the shortest direction of turn, so no matter where it is, it will turn to 90 degrees from that. Set speed to 40 knots and apply it to my scripted platform. And I'm going to clear the landing zone. And I'm doing that by just applying a blank landing zone to the platform, because I want this platform to just land where it is. If it had a landing zone, it would go back to the landing zone. I'm going to set the tactic land. And I need to remember to apply that to the scripted platform and have the platform land without landing zone, which means it will land straight ahead. So the script's number variable is set to 0. The while loop goes through twice, pumping out some chaff at 2 milliseconds. The aircraft will turn, slow its speed to 40 knots, and land. I buttonize it as normal. Selecting the icons I want and the no user input, and I can add it as the reaction posture for the aircraft. There it is. Now if I play my mission, we can see the helicopter's about to be engaged. The script has been added. The while loop's already complete because it was only 4 milliseconds. It's now turned and is 90 degrees perpendicular to the highest radar threat. And has landed. And now for our fourth script. This uses the same initial while loop as the previous script, but it adds a flare release at the same time as the chaff. Then the script uses one of MACE's included code scripts, calling it from the script editor to return to the script string variable the call sign of the closest entity that's targeting the scripted platform. The script then changes the maneuver performance of the script platform and then turns relative to the script string variable, which will be the nearest threat that's targeting it, speeds up, and then after 20 seconds returns to the nearest waypoint on its route. So I'm just copying that script and renaming because it actually contains quite a lot of the stuff I still want to do. A while loop with the right condition, all I need to do is just add that extra action here, which is the same as our normal equipment actions. Shoot regardless of loaded, and this time I'm choosing a flare. And applying it to the scripted platform. Everything else about that while loop is correct from the previous script. So that will run through twice. Now I need to consider what happens after the while loop. So I'm going to remove these actions and just start at the end of the while loop. So this time I'm going to add an action. And I'm going to scripting 2, and I'm going to execute a code script. And MACE comes with a load of code scripts in the normal MACE file structure that we can use. But the one I'm looking for is under actions, because it's going to return to me a particular value, and it's called closest enemy targeting me. And all that's going to do is put a value in the script string variable. But like I said, if we want to have a look at it, if I open the system settings and open the plugins tab, I can have a look at the code scripts, find the one that we're going to use, closest enemy targeting me. And if you're able to read code, you can have a look through here and see that it iterates through all of the threats nearby and works out which ones are targeting me and which one out of those is the closest, and then its very last line is to fill the script string variable with the call sign of that. Give me something to turn against. So if I go to navigation, I'm going to turn. This time I'm going to do a 180. I'm going to run away. Doesn't matter which direction, because I'm going to put turn shortest direction, and this time I'm going to turn relative to the script string variable of this script and apply it to this scripted platform, because that will be the closest threat targeting me at the time this script executes. Just going to add an action now to change the maneuver aggressiveness. So in case we'd gone into a sort of more benign mode, I'm going to apply it to the current state and change it to max performance. I need that to happen before the turn, so I'm moving it up above that turn action. We're going to increase speed to 120 knots and apply that to the platform without waiting for the next action. And then I'm going to apply a little delay before proceeding to waypoint. This time I'm going to say just the nearest waypoint on the route, not whether we visited it or not. I'll enter intent, go back to 100 knots, and I'll apply that to the scripted platform. This time I did untick wait for action to finish. That means that if it's on its way to the waypoint and it gets threatened again, because the script will be finished, it can then execute an evasion maneuver again, rather than it getting to the waypoint and that being the end of the evasion maneuver. So I can buttonize it as normal. Choose an icon. Don't want a user input. And then, as we've done before, I need to add it as the threat reaction script. And we're good to go. So I'll save and play. And we shall see the script get created once the aircraft's under threat. Look out for the script string variable. So our chaff has happened and our script string variable is now SA15-2. We can see the one with the target tracking radar is SA15-2, turned 180 degrees from SA15-2, done the 120 knot run, done it for 20 seconds, and now it's returning to its waypoint. And there it goes again, with the target tracking radar coming on. We have a second evade threat targeting me script applied. But this time it's unsuccessful.